I trusted her with everything, but she betrayed me by sinking our $150,000 savings into her new venture. Little did she know, I'd already taken steps to turn her victory into her biggest regret. But what were those steps? And how could I possibly fight back against such a betrayal? I'm Ethan, and this is the story of how I lost everything, only to build it back in a way I never imagined possible. For 8 years, Sarah and I had been inseparable. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, her in a bright yellow dress, laughing at my terrible dance moves. I was a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm, pulling in a steady but modest income. Sarah, on the other hand, was a dreamer, always sketching ideas for her big break. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, but her heart was set on something bigger. We weren't married, but we didn't need a ring to prove our commitment. We shared a small apartment in the city, a joint bank account, and a dream. A house of our own. Not just any house, a 2-story fixer-upper with a big backyard where we could plant a garden, maybe even get a dog someday. That dream kept us going through the tough times. Our joint account held $150,000. It wasn't just money, it was years of sacrifice. I'd taken on extra shifts, working weekends to oversee construction projects in the scorching heat or freezing cold. Sarah had her freelance gigs, but I was the steady earner. We skipped vacations, ate cheap meals, and saved every penny we could. "One day, Ethan," she'd say, holding my hand as we scrolled through real estate listings on my beat-up laptop. "One day we'll have our home." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my partner, my best friend, my everything. But what was she really planning behind those promises? 6 months ago, everything changed. Sarah came home one evening, her eyes sparkling with an energy I hadn't seen in years. "Ethan, I've got it," she exclaimed, tossing her bag on the couch and pulling out her laptop. "I've found the perfect idea, a sustainable fashion startup. It's going to be huge." She showed me her business plan, a 20-page document filled with charts, projections, and sketches of eco-friendly clothing designs. I wasn't an expert in fashion, but I could see the passion in her eyes. "This is my chance to make a difference," she said, "to build something that matters." I was proud of her. I wanted her to succeed. But there was something in her tone, a hint of secrecy, that I couldn't quite place. Was I just imagining it? We sat down that night over a dinner of spaghetti and cheap wine, talking through the details. She said she'd need some startup capital to get things going, maybe $10,000 to cover initial costs like fabric samples and a website. I hesitated. That was a chunk of our savings, money we'd earmarked for the house. But I loved her, and I trusted her. "Okay," I said finally. "We can take $10,000, but let's be careful. That's our future we're dipping into." She nodded, leaned across the table, and kissed me. "You're the best, Ethan, I promise. We'll do this together." Her words felt so sincere, but were they? Why did I feel a knot in my stomach as she smiled at me? The next few weeks were a blur. Sarah was consumed with her startup, spending late nights on her laptop, whispering on the phone with potential investors. I tried to stay involved, asking questions about her progress, but she'd brush me off. "It's all coming together, Ethan. Don't worry," she'd say, her tone sharp. I chalked it up to stress. Starting a business was hard, right? I didn't want to push her. But then, one Tuesday morning, everything fell apart. I was at work, taking a break between meetings, when I decided to check our joint account. We had a bill due for the apartment's utilities, and I needed to transfer some money. I logged in, expecting to see our usual balance, around $150,000. But the screen showed something else. $0, 0 cents. My heart stopped. I refreshed the page, thinking it was a glitch. Still zero. My hand started shaking as I called the bank. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice trembling. The representative was calm, almost robotic. "No mistake, sir. A transfer was made 3 days ago, $150,000 to an account we don't have on file. It was authorized with your signature." My signature? I hadn't signed anything. What was going on? That evening, I waited for Sarah to come home. She walked in around 8 p.m., her face buried in her phone, typing furiously. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely steady, "what happened to our savings?" She froze, her eyes darting up to meet mine. For a moment, she looked panicked, but then her expression hardened. "I needed it for the business, Ethan," she said, her tone cold, like I was the one being unreasonable. "This is my chance to shine. You'll thank me when we're millionaires." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You took all of it? $150,000? Without even talking to me?" I shouted, my voice breaking. She didn't flinch. "I knew you'd say no," she replied. "You're always so cautious. I had to do this. For us." "For us?" How could she say that? Before I could say another word, she grabbed a suitcase from the closet. "I need space to focus on my dreams," she said, stuffing clothes into the bag. "I'm staying with a friend for a while." She left a note on the counter, 3 cold lines about needing to prioritize herself, and walked out. I stood there, staring at the door, my world crumbling around me. Our savings, our dream, our life, gone in an instant. But how had she pulled this off? And what was I going to do about it? The next few days were a fog. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I called in sick to work, unable to focus. My best friend Mark came over to check on me. "You look like hell, man," he said, handing me a coffee. I told him everything, my voice shaking as I recounted Sarah's betrayal. Mark's a lawyer, and he listened carefully, his brow furrowing. "Ethan, there's something you need to check," he said. "That joint account, did it have any special clauses?" I pulled up the account agreement on my laptop, and there it was. A clause we'd added years ago, requiring both signatures for withdrawals over $50,000. Sarah had forged my signature to transfer the money. It was fraud, plain and simple. Mark nodded. "You've got a case here, but legal action takes time. What do you want to do?" What did I want to do? I wanted to make her pay, but how? As the shock faded, anger took its place. I wasn't going to let Sarah walk away with everything we'd built, thinking she could erase me from her life. I started digging. First, I looked into her startup. She'd been posting about it on Instagram and LinkedIn, bragging about her solo journey and how she'd bootstrapped the business with her own money. Every post made my blood boil. She was painting herself as a self-made entrepreneur, while I was left with nothing. But then, I noticed something. Her investors. She'd tagged them in her posts, thanking them for their support. What if they didn't know the truth? I created a fake email account and reached out to one of her investors, posing as a potential partner interested in sustainable fashion. I set up a call with a woman named Claire, a venture capitalist who'd put $50,000 into Sarah's startup. "Sarah's incredible," Claire said over Zoom, her voice full of admiration. She told us she funded the whole thing herself. $150,000 of her own money. That kind of commitment is rare. I felt a surge of rage. Sarah hadn't just stolen from me. She'd built her entire brand on a lie. I thanked Claire for her time, ended the call, and started planning. What could I do with this information? The answer was starting to take shape, but I needed to be patient. For the next 2 months, I played the long game, I let Sarah think she'd won. She moved forward with her startup, posting updates about her progress, hiring a small team, and even renting a fancy office space downtown. I watched from a distance, my anger simmering but controlled. She announced a big launch event for her brand, Green Thread, inviting investors, influencers, and the local press. The event was set to take place at a trendy venue in the city, complete with live music and a fashion show. Sarah was on top of the world, giving interviews about her self-made success, smiling for the cameras like she hadn't a care in the world. But what she didn't know was that I'd been working behind the scenes, gathering everything I needed to bring her down. What was my plan? It was almost time to find out. The day after her launch event, I made my move. I sat at my desk, my laptop open, and drafted an email to every single one of her investors, Claire included. I attached the bank records showing the $150,000 withdrawal, the forged signature, and a detailed timeline of how Sarah had taken the money from our joint account, money that was meant for our shared future. I wrote, "I thought you should know the truth about where Sarah's personal investment really came from. She stole it from me." I hit send, my heart pounding. But that wasn't all. I also sent the same information to a journalist I'd found through a local news outlet, someone known for covering business scandals. What would happen next? I could only wait and see. Within hours, the fallout began. Claire called Sarah first, demanding an explanation. I'd hacked into Sarah's email earlier that week, using a password she hadn't bothered to change since we were together, and I saw the panicked messages piling up. "Is this true?" Claire wrote. "Did you lie to us about the funding?" Other investors followed, one by one pulling their support. The journalist ran with the story, publishing an article titled "Self-Made CEOs Fraud Exposed: The Truth Behind Green Thread." It went viral, racking up thousands of shares in a matter of hours. Sarah's brand, her dream, her victory, it all came crashing down. But what was she going to do about it? Would she fight back? That evening, my phone started buzzing. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. Call after call, voicemail after voicemail. I let them go to voicemail, listening later as her voice grew more desperate with each message. "Ethan, please, you have to stop this," she begged in the first one. "You're ruining everything." By the fifth, she was sobbing. "I'm sorry, okay? I'll pay you back. Just call off the press, please." I didn't answer. She'd made her choice, and now she was facing the consequences. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness as I listened to her pleas. She'd thought she could erase me, but I'd turned the tables. But was this really the end? A week later, I got a call from the bank. Using the evidence of Sarah's fraud, I'd filed a claim to recover our savings. The bank agreed to reimburse me $100,000 as a settlement. Not the full amount, but enough to start over. I sat on my couch, staring at the transfer confirmation, a small smile on my face. I was already looking at new real estate listings, not for the house Sarah and I had dreamed of, but for a place of my own. A fresh start on my terms. But what would I do with that money? And what would my new life look like? As for Sarah, her startup folded within a month. The lawsuits from her investors piled up, and last I heard, she'd moved back in with her parents, her dreams in tatters. She tried to reach out one more time, sending me a long email apologizing for everything, promising to make it right. I didn't respond. She'd had her chance, and she'd chosen to betray me. Her victory had become her biggest regret, and I was finally free to build the life I deserved. But would she ever recover from this, or was this truly the end of her story? This is my story of betrayal, revenge, and rebuilding. Sarah thought she could take everything from me and walk away unscathed. But in the end, I showed her that underestimating me was the biggest mistake she'd ever made.